Well, we'll go with this. And the agenda was placed on the city website as usual. So, do we have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any more ayes up there?
Is that Dean calling?
Aye.
Okay.
Is that Dean?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. All opposed? Abstain. Motion carries. We have an agenda. Okay. Public comment. Have we received any? Has City Clerk received any comments via email, telephone call, or any other means?
Would you like me to check with the clerk?
Please, yeah, since it is part of the agenda.
Reading the WAPE report.
No comments have been submitted to City Clerk for either reading or whatever. Okay, moving on. Sorry for the delay. Our first interview is Ms. Rachel Kirkland interviewing for Manassas Park City School Board. You probably know the drill. What we'll do is we'll start with an opening statement. Then we'll move into questions. So there's a minimum of confusion. What we'll do is we will start with the folks at home, one by one, and then we'll come to the folks who are present in person, and we will also ask questions, and then we will conclude with a final statement from Rachel. So do you want to go ahead and start with your opening statement?
Just quickly, I didn't prepare anything for the opening. I'm pleased and excited to make application again to be on the school board. I'm finishing my 12th year now, and I still feel like I have work to do and value to add. So I look forward to your questions this evening, and I appreciate the time and the degree to which you facilitated this interview during this time. So thank you very much.
Well, we want to thank you for the depth and the detail that you provided answering all of the questions, and we want to thank you for your 12 years of service, and thank you for making application again. So why don't we start with Councilmember Machado? What would your first question be?
Hi, Rachel. Again, I want to thank you for your 12 years of service. In public service, the public demands a lot, but no, we don't receive too many gratifications of the work that is done in growth. So thank you again on behalf of the parents and the students. I read your document. Thank you so much for being so thorough. I'm just going with the last section. What can be done different?
You broke up what can be done. You broke up a little bit at the end. If you could repeat.
Yes. What can be done differently to improve everything? Mm-hmm.
Everything. As I've been on the board, I've seen a definite evolution of, first it was the buildings, and then, we moved to technology. The budget problems that exist in the city are not going away. And I think in order to really start to address I think it's the biggest thing that we have to deal with. We need to figure out how to make a sustainable, excellent school system based with what we have and not with what we wish to get, if that makes sense. And I think that really is the next very big challenge that awaits us. As you know, Dr. McDade retired this year. He is staying on one more year due to the COVID crisis, and I am deeply grateful for that and the continuity of leadership with that. However, I think during this time of change, it really is an opportunity to take kind of a top to bottom look at, okay, we know what the financial situation of the city is. It's not changing. Does that absolve us for advocating for our staff and advocating for the division in getting money from you budgetarily to sustain us? No. But I think at some point we have to look at what we have available and see if there are any ways in terms of how we structure the organization of the school system, top to bottom, to see if there's any way that we can keep in line with what we can reasonably expect to get from the city while promoting excellence, while paying our staff and compensating not just fairly but well. I mean, you base it on your side too. It is like an arms race with the salaries, and I think that there's no magic wand. We're still going to have several years of financial struggle, even as these developments come online after COVID. But even then, the reality is we are a small city, and we have to kind of embrace what makes us unique. And I think we have to be able, and we have to want to think differently about how we organize. Much of what I said in my interview packet or my question packet had to do potentially with the, there was a question 5 is always, what could you get rid of? What could you get rid of? And there isn't like one thing we can get rid of. Everything that we do is mandated to some degree or other, but there's got to be a way to tweak things here and there to save money that we could put into salaries, that we could put into instruction, that we could put into experiences for our students educationally. And that really, that out-of-the-box thinking, we've had 2 superintendents in 25 years, and they've left incredible legacies. One was building the school system basically to what it is today physically. The other one, Dr. McDade, made an investment and thought for technology, and now that we are in the situation that we're in, we are seeing the absolute benefit of that. And I think really the next priority, after after COVID and after, next year will be how do we move forward embracing who we are and the size that we are, and embracing working with what we have to make this the absolute best that it can be.
Mayor, should I continue with my questions, or are we all going around and we'll go?
I think we should
Next
try to,
question on-
I think we should move on, and then we'll try to get a second round of questions. Councilmember Javed, what is your question?
Hey Rachel, how you doing?
Hey Steve, how are you?
Good. I just want to, if you can quickly, I know there's, achievement gaps throughout the school system. What causes it, and what can be done to minimize those achievement gaps within students?
So achievement gaps are really kind of opportunity gaps. Achievement gaps are based on socioeconomic, racial, language barriers, all sorts of different educational differences, special education, all sorts of differences in the background of the children that we teach. And, the concept of Title I, is supposed to provide remediation from those, for those kids to get them to where they need to be. Closing the gaps is is the day-to-day struggle that anyone in a classroom has. And it becomes an equity issue, and equity is definitely a focus within the division. It always has been, but I think we're finally calling it what it is. Equity in access to technology. When we had balanced calendar and we had those different experiences in intersession, that was another kind of equity piece, sharing, giving kids experiences that only some kids get, the more fluent kids. Project Up has maintained some of that. I know in the budget this year that was proposed and adopted by the school board, there were some things that came back to the secondary campus within the funding. There was college caravans again, and that is something that I feel very passionately about. There is a huge experience gap. I'm working with a cohort of students who happen to be friends of my son, and my son's tired of hearing me talk about college. I'm sure as parents, we've had the same experience. They don't want to hear it from us anymore. His friends sought me out to start talking about college because they had no frame of reference. I would take them to college tours, and one day coming back, Mrs. Kirkland, what time does college start, and what time does it end? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he had no idea how a college schedule ran. So I whipped out my laptop when we got home, and I explained how a major works but there was a whole gap of knowledge that my son, understands because both of his parents went to college. But this young man, whose dad's a painter and his mom's a homemaker, and they're from El Salvador, he didn't have that experience. We've got to work on bridging that gap for our students. And, it does need to fall within the school setting. But I think a lot of us as community members could do more to bridge those opportunity gaps as well. Because it is very real. Knowledge is contextualized, and if you don't have the context, it puts you at a deficit from the beginning, whether that, context is lack of English language, lack of socioeconomic factors, food insecurity, any of that, special education, any of that. So I think that addressing those needs is how you start to close those gaps. And I think this division does a lot. I think it has to be more than the division ultimately. I think it has to be the whole community. It has to be, it's a bigger picture than just like one fix.
Thank you. Was that the end of your answer?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Sunday Haas, what is your question?
Hello, Ms. Kirkland. So my question is, talking about college, we do have a lot of students who are immigrants, but of course, they don't know how to navigate the system, or they might be scared to actually apply to colleges. Right now, there's an effort for immigrant students who are undocumented to, have in-state tuition. They support in-state tuition for undocumented immigrants, and they feel that our school system can help them navigate the system.
I absolutely do, personally, politically, all of that. I absolutely do support in-state tuition for undocumented children. I think, they came here, they were young, it's not a choice. They are here, they're making their lives here, and we need to do everything possible to support them. I think, there's a huge knowledge gap about college. I think one of the things that I mentioned in my questions when we were talking about this, I think there really does need to be a culture of mentorship. I've been able to step out and mentor a certain segment of children, but I think parents need mentorship too. There's a program that they run in the elementary schools, Parents as Educational Partners, where they discuss the ins and the outs of going to school in America, but it always has felt to me like it's just an elementary program, and it really should be secondary. Parents across the board have aspirations for their children, and they, as much as their kids need to know what to do, parents also need to know what to do to support their child and what's important, why grades are important at the high school level, why, maybe dual enrollment is something a child should be looking at, even if they're not planning on going to university, just because of the plethora of trades that are available at Nova. Building those community partnerships to really do the outreach within the communities. I think we can absolutely do a better job of that. I think we need to leverage some of our partnerships like with Nova and really build out some programming for secondary parents so they can understand better what these paths are and how to get their children to where their children want to go and the dreams that they have for them.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We'll come to the in-person council members now. Councilmember Mensing, what is your question?
Hi. My question relates to the coronavirus crisis that we have going on here. We're looking at a school year that might not be normal. We may have intermittent school closures. Some people are talking about certain groups of children going to school on certain days a week and then staying home and teleschooling on the other days of week. As a school board member, you enact policy for the school system. How do you think policy changes can help find a path forward through this next school year?
When the COVID, I think there's work to be done. I think a lot of things got waived by the state when the COVID emergency was announced and we closed. And I think, it is to the detriment of some of our more marginalized students, specifically students in special education who receive services. They're not required to currently receive kind of the same level of service. So they're not really getting the fullness of the education that the other students are getting. So there are real issues of parity in that. And I think as a board member, I think we're going to have to address it. Or as a board member, I think as a group, we're going to have to figure out a way to address it, because I don't think that, everyone's going to have to learn differently to this. They're even by sending laptops home, that's predicated on the whole notion that people have internet. And I think in this community that's largely true, but that's not absolute. And I think we have to kind of roll up our sleeves and work one-on-one with families and individualize this process as we go through it. In terms of other policy things, it'd be like school calendars, the length of the school year. Those things are dictated by the state, but I think the school boards are going to have a big role in advocacy to shape what not just this year looks like, but really going into next year and all of the things you mentioned, possibly off days or smaller classes, what that all looks like. I've heard many scenarios, both, from the news, but then also just being somebody that works in a school. We've discussed a lot of these things. And yeah, next year is not going to look like a normal year. Like this year didn't look like a normal year. It's going to be different. And I think the role of the board is to really support and advocate to make the changes so children still get what they need educationally and instructionally.
Thank you. My question to you is this. On one of your answers, you said that we would not have to eliminate any people, without eliminating anyone at all. that we could take a look at any improvements in workflow over time that reduce expenses while improving the student experience and outcome. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
When I talk about, in that answer, I talk about how people are positions of people. And in this community, we associate with this person does that. And I think a lot of this would have to happen over the course of time. I think if we were to implement something like this where we did a restructuring, I don't think the community would support a wanton restructuring where we were eliminating jobs wantonly and just throwing things. I think there's a certain amount of movement every year within school divisions. In these positions, people leave. I think we need to start, and that's what I meant by that, was it doesn't necessarily have to be, eliminating people. I think as things start to naturally shift around, I think we always are going to have to look for opportunities to potentially restructure things. In the research that I did, knowing that this was coming and just thinking about the budget and what we went through this year and the situation that we're going to be facing in the coming years, I really did take a hard look at what we could do differently. There's no one place in anything that I wrote where I think this is the answer. We could get a large chunk of money back if we just did X, Y, or Z. It's not that. It would be little changes over time in terms of how we structured jobs. Having a central office is an expense, or having the central office that we have is an expense. When the roof went out, do you guys remember that, when they were having the roofing problem and everybody had to move out of City Hall? Mm-hmm. They moved people to the buildings, and I got a lot of good comments about actually seeing people around the buildings, but they're there all the time anyway. We're having a meeting online, right? The seven of you and me. We're having a meeting online. Things change. Does everyone need to be co-located to do their jobs efficiently and effectively? Things evolve over time, and that was kind of where I was going with that answer. It doesn't have to be any position or I think there needs to be kind of a wholesale looking at where do we move to get the biggest bang for our buck, and to get to a point where we have the staffing that we need to educate our kids and the class sizes that we want for them, and still get all of the ancillary work done, and make sure that the role of the central office is to support the teachers and to make sure that the teachers are supported in every way, shape, and fashion that they need to be the best possible teachers to our students.
Okay, thank you. That was clear. Thank you. Vice Mayor Banks?
Hi, Rachel.
Hey.
My question's in regards to how could we retain our high-performing teachers and staff? We lag behind in compensation in Northern Virginia, and especially with this pandemic and its effects in our economy, it looks like it's going to be that way for a while. So other than compensation, how can we retain our high-performing teachers and staff, and also recruit teachers and staff?
Recruiting is probably our more successful area. It's been a little challenging this year without the college fairs, but really within a college network of hiring students, colleges are very proactive in reaching out to potential employers as well. So I think that one's less of a concern. Benefiting, so salary is really important, really important. And I read a lot on some people just putting all of their money into salaries, and the benefits were more expensive, and I'm not sure if that's a way to go. I think there is a lot to be said for culture of respect, of autonomy, one of the things that the division did, and this is strictly operational, but from the perspective of somebody who is an employee in a neighboring division, that I thought was brilliant. Teachers don't get annual leave like you do. We can't take vacations throughout the year. If somebody's getting married, it winds up being a big to-do of trying to get time off to go be in a wedding. And when you have younger people, that happens a lot. One of the things that they announced at the convocation that really made teachers feel good and valued was if you have 6 days that you aren't using, if you're above a certain threshold, you can now roll those days over to personal days. So you don't have to call out sick because you had to go to a wedding. So you can make those once in a lifetime things, trips or family occasions that you might not be able to make otherwise if they happen during the school year. Because the division wanted the teachers to understand that they respected them as professionals and as people, and they wanted them to feel valued in that way. I think there's a lot you can do to make a teacher feel valued. Excellent professional development, professional support, mentoring, but just in the day-to-day kind of work-life balance, that was a small one, but I tell you, the response that I heard from it, it was huge, and it may not sound like a big deal to you, but for teachers who have this very defined, tightly defined calendar, it was actually a very big deal. I think teachers want the support and the respect of their community, and that's, I'm wondering how much COVID's going to change it when people have had their kids home with them for a couple of months, and then they get to send them back to school. It's hard. It's hard to really express the value of the work that people do in the classroom. Because it's never going to be financial, and it's never going to be what any of those tangible things that we would think of. It's really about how you feel about your work, and I think we have a responsibility to do that. And I think that's one of the things that came up during the budget process was, everyone wanted to fight for a 5% raise. I was hesitant to do that because I didn't want to lead people along. I didn't want it to be political. I will fight for a raise for a teacher anytime, but if I'm going to fight for a raise, I really want to make sure that they get it. I don't want it to be a situation where we're proposing something and expecting that you're going to say no, but making you the heavy and not taking responsibility for ourselves. I think that was the view of some going into budget this year, and it was not one that I was comfortable with. You shouldn't play games with people. I think that is where one of the ways that you can show value and respect to their work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was excellent. Councilmember Shoemaker.
Okay, so a while back, I was thinking through the budget, and it doesn't change, as you say. The fundamentals are kind of baked in, so to speak. And I thought,
Yeah.
what would be the game changer, as you were saying? I think also in your written statement, that what's the game changer? And one of the things I thought about is it's not a requirement for us to run a school division, and there are localities in Virginia that don't run them. Fairfax City does not run a school division. When I went to college, Williamsburg does not run a school division. Williamsburg and James City County are actually a combined school division because the city is so small that they don't have the economies of scale, kind of like us, probably more so. what would your thoughts be of approaching Manassas or approaching Prince William for a possible merger to get the size and to get the opportunities for our kids that you guys say you want, which we want too, and also to be able to get teachers paid better that we haven't been able to do at this point. What are your thoughts about merging our school division with the neighboring one to get the things we say we want?
That's a big idea. So there are a couple of things. One, this was actually discussed in Charlottesville many years back, and Albemarle was so desperate not to bring Charlottesville into their school system that they actually gave them some money. I'm not sure how that worked. I'll have to look that up, but I remember reading the story and I was like, are you serious? I think, okay, so from my perspective as a parent, I have absolutely loved the autonomy that being in a small school division has given me and my children. No child really is unknown here. Everyone, there's no kid that walks through the halls that is faceless. Everyone knows everyone else. I would hate to see that go. It is not ideal by any way, shape, or form. Just as people discuss it about, Manassas Park and moving back into the county, I think there are problems with it that we don't understand. I will personally look into it. I'm hesitant to say that I'm a fired up fan, but I also understand that, anything's possible. And we need to make sure as a community that we give our children the best education possible. And if that was the only way to do it, that would be what I wanted. That would be what I would want. But sitting here right now, I'm not excited about the idea, but, given the amount of work that I put into those answers, you bet I'm going to go back and research it and see what the ramifications are. Absolutely.
Thank you. I think we can do another round. If they're not too lengthy, we can go around again. Councilmember Machado?
Yes. My second question, Rachel, is about dual enrollment and how can we improve the outreach to parents and high schoolers so they can take this opportunity, for example, for the governor's school, for the early program for first generation of college students. How can we improve the outreach?
So I actually did some research because that's a big thing for me. That's a passion of mine. Students that what's this stat? I put a stat in one of my answers. Students who have college credit in their hands are more likely to finish college than their counterparts who are not. And this is certainly true for minority students, Hispanic students, African American students. If they go in there with that credit already under their belt. AP is a wonderful opportunity, but it is a bit of a misnomer. 3 is a passing score for AP, but in order to earn credit at college, you have to get a 4 or a 5. And that is not commonly discussed. I don't think it's as understood as it should be going in. For students who want to go to school in-state, dual enrollment is an excellent opportunity. Fluvanna County does an active dual enrollment where they really allow and encourage their students to go off campus junior and senior year to do a lot of their classes. and as dual enrollment, your history, your government, your English, all of that. And they're able to walk out several students. A friend of mine who went to school here in Manassas Park, whose children are now down in Louisiana, her son is already finished his associates, and he's now just held up waiting to finish his high school courses to graduate. He was able to do that within the last 2 years in a dual enrollment program. I think it is a wonderful opportunity. I really think, I don't know why it does not seem to be as popular here in Northern Virginia. I know NOVA has a partnership. They allow dual enrollment, and certainly we have classes at the high school that are dual enrolled. I think that partnership needs to be grown, and that sort of back and forth needs to be encouraged, even with some financial subsidy for students taking classes on campus. It could potentially lighten the class loads at the high school. I have no data on that, but I would just think it would stand to reason if you had enough students doing it, it could potentially lighten class loads or shift things around there and provide some economies of scale as well. I think, again, it goes to the educational piece, and I think having those conversations earlier and more often. Nobody knows that in fifth grade, math is what defines your ability to be able to be in calculus in junior. Nobody's having those conversations, and I think it's absolutely incumbent on us to do that. And I think having conversations about NOVA and their offerings, not even as a push to everyone needs to go to four-year college, but the trade opportunities are so, amazing there. And how can we as a community support that and make that transition from high school to what's after high school as seamless as possible?
How can we improve the outreach in the community?
Outreach? I think it is by building programming. Sorry, I missed that part. I think it really is by building programming within the schools, by articulating kind of a mentorship program for both students and parents so that they are educated and aware of what opportunities are out there. Fifth graders should, if a child is interested in math and science, we should be talking to them in fifth grade about governor's school, because the fifth grade math is what decides that, really. We should be talking to them in sixth grade about EIP widely, so more people, take advantage. We should have an extra, right now it's EIP, and then you get the other big kind of push in terms of transitional stuff is getting a pathway to the baccalaureate guidance your senior year. That's a whole lot of time where people aren't getting the guidance they need to make decisions. And yes, we have guidance people, and yes, that is their job. But I think you really have to engage parents in it, and that really becomes a program, outreach. At my job, I work a lot in, Georgetown South. I've been dropping things off over there. We really do need to know our community throughout the city, everywhere. But particularly on the west side of the city, we need to know where the places. You can't just sit in a school and expect people to come to you. You really need to get out into the community, see where people are, see where people congregate, see where people, and go to them and talk to them about these opportunities. That's why I like the scheduled delivery thing for freshmen so much. Doing a home visit over the course of high school where you got to sit down with the parents. If they're not comfortable being in the home, meet them somewhere or invite them to school, but do something where you're sitting down with those parents to talk about the opportunities that are there and your child's future, and what's available. I think that is one-to-one outreach is probably the best, save for any other place or space or community point which we may or may not have in this community.
Thank you. We'll move on now to Councilmember Javed. We have about 17 minutes left. We're going to start the second interview at about 10 minutes after 8. We had some technical difficulties, so my apologies to the next candidate, but go ahead, Councilmember Javed.
I'll try to talk less.
Sure, yeah, I'll be quick. I guess if you can, in your opinion, what do you think about expanding the early childhood programs such as, pre-K and kindergarten classes? They seem to be overlooked in some of those, and that's the starting point for a lot of the children to establish learning mechanisms. So what's your thoughts of expanding the early childhood programs?
So I think in an early iteration of the governor's budget, there was a move afoot to be able to expand this. I think that we could do a better, if we had the space, and space really is the biggest issue, we really should try to grow the program. It's desperately needed. The outcomes for students who have had, whether it's preschool or VPI or Head Start, are so much better than the outcomes for children who have not had that level of education and socialization. I know we have a class, or preschool class over at the rec center. And when my children were younger, they were always talking about how it was more play and less school. I think that is if we aren't partnering together to really help inform some of what goes on at the preschool class at the rec center, we really should be. The other thing is there is a group called Bright Beginnings that I've gotten a call about, and I think we should be working with them a bit to try to see what we can do in terms just in the community to grow literacy and early childhood education and skills. One of the favorite things, if I ever win the lottery, I would love to bring Imagination Library here. If none of you have ever heard of it, it's an initiative by Dolly Parton, and she is a company that sends books to children once a month, birth through age 5, and English and Spanish and other languages as well now, I believe. And it's grant funded and donation funded for the municipality, but it puts books into the community, and that is such an enormous piece of just the availability of text and material and getting a love of learning in early. So anything that can ever be done to grow that, I am a huge fan of, not just as a board member and a parent, but as an educator, because I have seen that. I think every child should enter school. You know, it starts so early and it starts so hard, and I think, kids really don't know, parents don't understand that they're coming to kindergarten and they're starting to work. It's not even, playtime anymore, to our detriment, I think. But, the fact that you need to be able to read and learn by 3rd grade, and they really expect you to be able to have the basics of reading by the time you enter 1st grade. And that takes work, and it doesn't get done in 1 year, and early education is a huge component of that.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Sendejas?
Yes. In regard to discipline, if a student fights in school, should they get suspended, have a detention, or should there be a different approach of meeting their behavioral needs?
We're mandated by Virginia code to some degree in terms of certain things, but I'm a big believer in restorative justice as a practice, and having those restorative conversations in terms of discipline involving families. and trying to, and not being kind of the first approach before you get into suspensions and removing students from school. The outcomes for students who are suspended even at a young age are so much worse than those who aren't. Anytime you remove a child from school, it's a very, very serious thing, whether it's a short-term suspension or a long-term suspension. And I've dealt with that. I've dealt with some of that on board, but as an educator too, and I can just tell you that it is incredibly. We all want discipline in the classroom. We all expect discipline in the classroom. We want that support from our administration. We want that support from home. But at the same time, it is hugely detrimental to remove students from school. And also, I would say that it disproportionately, suspensions and disciplines disproportionately affects students of color and students with special needs. And I think there is an equity issue there that has to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Mensing?
You mentioned that Dr. McDade is going to be serving one more year, so you would be searching for a new superintendent. What qualities are you looking for in the new superintendent, and would you consider having a residency requirement?
I personally am a fan of the residency requirement. In my mind, I am only one person on the board, but in my mind, that is a priority for me. I believe with the issues regarding budget, I believe that the next superintendent should be a taxpayer on Manassas Park to really fully engage in that conversation. That is no slight to the existing superintendent or the decision that was made, which I was involved in back then too. I will take ownership of it. We did not require a residency for our superintendent. Our superintendent has done extremely well. He's been incredibly dedicated to the school system. But personally, that is one change I wish to make. As far as qualities, I would like to, I'd like to find someone who in some way, whether it's through experience or enthusiasm, has a connection to the diversity of our community. I would love to find a superintendent. Obviously, in some of my questions.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Hold on, Rachel.
She froze up.
Time out.
Rachel, you froze up.
It's one of my answers in the packet, who could awful lot of comparison at school staffing and I think if to find somebody who could who would think differently, think outside. I hate the phrase think outside the box, but think outside the box and maybe see other ways. Kind of towards the reform. I was having a conversation with a friend. I don't know that I'm a full-on reformer, but I appreciate different vision and different views. And I would love to see someone. And certainly probably the biggest quality, and certainly a nod to our existing superintendent, is just the presence and the enthusiasm for the students in the building. I think he's been tremendous in that regard, and I would like to see that personal connection to the students and whoever comes next.
Thank you. Thank you. There's been some excellent questions asked, so I'm going to forego my time as a question because I want Vice Mayor Banks and Councilmember Shoemaker to have that opportunity. So,
I have one more question.
Yeah, I will.
oh, Preston, do you have a question?
I do, but if you have enough time,
Okay,
go ahead,
well then
Donna.
Councilmember Shoemaker, please.
I'm actually gonna give you a question that I've kind of already previewed for you at the last meeting, and I actually heard Krista address it at your meeting, maybe last week, I guess it was. And I'm gonna ask you a very straightforward question is, how are you going in your next 3 years, if you're reappointed, budget and manage a staff, buildings, student body that is shrinking? How how would you adjust to less kids and possibly less money? How,
I think
things
that-
will you look at when things
Yeah,
change?
Were you done with your question? I'm sorry.
Too low.
Well, I'm just saying is that, you know, with the school division that's shrinking, is your projections show it's, you're gonna have less kids for the next 3 or 4 years. What does a smaller school division look like with possibly less kids, maybe less staff, less money? How are you going to right size the organization
Donald,
to fit down?
everybody's having trouble hearing you for your mic. Is it?
Okay. I think I got the gist of it, how to right size the organization. And I kind of alluded to that a little bit in the fact that we are funded for certain positions based on the SOQ, but we're not fully funded. I think we are going to have to figure out ways, obviously per pupil allocations, like weighty guide basically breaks it down by, each jurisdiction spends a certain amount of money on a student. And when you have fewer students, you have less money. I think there's going to have to be you can't have more people under the SOQ if you don't have more students. It's just not possible. So I think, class size will continue to be kind of a driver. I don't think anyone's expectations on class size are going to change just because we have less students, but ultimately it will mean, you're right, it will mean fewer teachers. And currently most of our buildings are at or above capacity, so I'm not 100% sure it would, it is what it is. It's not a good thing, not a bad thing, it just is a fact. As I alluded to about realigning the central office, one of the things that happened when the roof came off is, people moved into the buildings to do their work. We didn't have a central office. Maybe that's part of what it would look like. Maybe that's how that extra space would be used. And then if we have an uptick in students, we, move back to a different model. But I think, again, in handling it over the next 3 to 4 years, potentially as student enrollment goes down, thinking outside the box through attrition, I don't think there's so much churn in a school division naturally that, you would wind up doing it through attrition. Basically, teachers leave, those positions don't go filled, people move, because we don't have the class size. It's sort of there's a certain amount of evening itself out. That said, the architecture, still needing an HR person, still needing a superintendent, still needing a director of finance, figure out what it is we actually need to do, what we have to do, and how we can do it. I think the priority for funding any school division needs to be school-based and school-focused, because that's where your teachers are and that's where your students are.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Banks, do you have a quick question?
I think that's it.
You're good?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Would you like to have your final statement now? I don't know if you prepared for that or not, but wing it.
I will wing it. I didn't want to over-prepare. I did a lot in those questions. I would very much like to come back for a fifth term. There's so much going on in the next few years with hiring a new superintendent, with transitioning that person in, with what Donald alluded to in his last question, with enrollment changing, with the new development coming online. As we bring a new superintendent in and go through all these changes, I think having had experience and some history would serve everyone well. As always, I want to work with the governing body. Does that mean we'll agree all the time? No. But what that does mean is that we work together to find common solutions to common problems, and that we do so from a place of trust and respect. And there is not a person on this board, honestly, that I don't trust, and certainly that I don't respect, because I respect each and every one of you. And I would be honored and blessed to be able to continue to work with my school board, but also to be able to work with you. And that's what I've got.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you for deciding to make application again. Thank you for the questions, the answers, and for your time this evening. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I will, is there a public hearing next week?
That would be, when is that scheduled for? Is that scheduled for May 5th? Do we know? Is Laszlo here?
Or May 19th?
May 5th. The public hearing for school board? 19th.
Comments?
May 19th.
Comments should be, the public hearing's the 19th?
Yes, we will confirm that. We'll let you know. We'll confirm that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But instead of people actually speaking, you're willing to accept comments via email?
Yes, definitely. Yes, always.
Okay.
Yes, okay. Okay.
Fantastic. Directed to you, or and you'll forward them to the whole board?
City Clerk, Ms. Connor, accepts
Okay,
all of the
fantastic.
comments, yeah. Thank you. Okay, you can hit your off button now.
Thanks, Rachel.
Bye.
I think.
She doesn't want to leave.
Okay.
She's so excited about
Oh,
it, she
there,
doesn't want to
okay.
leave.
Wish you had that mask on when you
Okay.
asked the first question.
So, do we have our next,
Yes, I'm gonna close this meeting, and I'm gonna open the next one so that Shannon can dial
does that affect the video stream?
in. We can stop the video stream and start another one, or we can just keep streaming
Okay.
and go straight into it.
I didn't know if it interrupted it in any
No.
way. Okay, thank you. That was just a question.
For those dialing in, you will need to dial in again on the second dial in, if you can. So once I end this meeting, you'll be dropping the call.
I was just thinking, like, the COVID is going to affect how the schools communicate with the teachers, and, you know, they can't do the parent-teacher night anymore, and
Yeah. Oh, Donald, before I forget, Don said he was having problems.
Hearing
in the
me?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so I just
uh-huh.
need to speak louder.
I don't know if it's your microphone, if it's how far you are, or that
Okay.
your voice is, you know, quieter than, you know.
Okay, I'll try to project a little bit better.
Okay, okay.
I don't want to shout, you know.
No, no, understood.
it's perfect. It's like, I mean, good questions.
Yeah.
If you asked me that first one, I would tell you that, give me a day. That was a good one.
Well,
You have
I
a
mean,
first question?
Yeah.
I would have, if I was interviewing, I'd be like, what?
Exactly. Good question.
wait,
Philosophically.
I asked him because, let's say, when I went to college, yeah.
We have Miriam and Hector.
Oh, I get to be in this
There's-
one?
Let's
I'm
see.
so excited.
Okay.
Oh, you're in this one. Oh, you
I
are.
was cut off on the last one. I went like this and my arm wasn't it.
I'm still out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Will she appear on the screen, I wonder?
Yes,
Okay.
once she dials in.
Okay.
We can see Steve and we can see Hector and Miriam really well. Is
Please enter your access code followed by the pound.
Is Shannon not going to be on video?
She is. I have to open the room before she can dial in,
Oh, gotcha.
which I'm going to text her now to dial in.
To enable audio controls, please enter your audio PIN followed by the pound or hash.
Like in the morning around like 4:30. And then I eat at 8 o'clock a lot.
Thanks, Keith.
Huh?
We're live.
She's dialing in right now.
She is, okay, thank you.
Be prudent to foresee it. It'd be wise to foresee a budget request for IT help. Because of this COVID thing.
No. A lot of the school divisions are realizing that too.
Yeah. They're
Prince
going
William.
to up their IT.
Yeah. Fairfax. It's like what not to do.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, that lady was fired. Or she quit. The IT director for Fairfax.
Yeah, so.
She just, I don't know if she quit or I think she quit. She'd been with Fairfax for 21 years. Yeah. That's why Manassas Park's doing it better than Fairfax. Because we have the best people.
Is this a good time to ask you about the Amazon delay?
Are there technical difficulties?
Not on our side. I mean, it's, we ship out everything we get, so. I think we're all getting an education in
Okay.
group meetings, Zoom, and I've done a few Zooms, which are kind of fun. I like them.
They're getting old.
I mean, if you can't do in person. We did our dance lesson in our dance group. We did the lesson through Zoom.
Oh,
Yeah.
Interesting.
wow.
We were able to, they had the video on like one person who was teaching the lesson and we could all see it, and then we were doing it at home, and then they had the discussion
For the
board.
folks that are watching from home, we're just having a slight bit of technical difficulty, but we'll get there. So please be patient.
It was good though. I mean, it was better than nothing, you know. It was fun. I was dancing in my living room. So it was 59 people, 59
Whoa.
users.
Wow.
And some of them were two people, you know, some of them were two people. So we had a good showing.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think we're going to figure out we can do a lot more technology-wise, not in person.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Yeah.
In a sense, it's sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
But,
sad.
but
You're
the
welcome.
thing is with traffic
Think
being so
Donald will
bad, people
appreciate
are going to
it.
be like, wow,
I'll do
I
that
could
for
go
Donald
to
every
work
day.
and I can
okay?
save 2 hours
Yeah.
by
Thank
not
you.
commuting. There.
You can do that, though.
That's true.
Well, true. I'm just saying, of the people that can, I think there will be more of it. Oh, thank you.
I guess 28 is no traffic.
Oh, yeah. Now, I mean, you don't drive in, do
I
you?
don't drive. Yeah.
Because you do VRE, but you're doing home now.
Right.
Thank you, Alana. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You sign your thing, Tom.
You can't do these because she's already witnessed these. She's already done these. I come by later.
Well, I'm witnessing it right now. You can sign it right now. I'm watching.
He may be
Thanks,
taking a
Alana.
break.
Yeah,
He might be
exactly. Let me
taking a
sign
break.
it.
Can you do it that way?
Yeah.
He's witnessing.
Even though it's already been notarized? Oh, you... Oh, because, okay, it was Lena.
Yeah, it just got notarized 2 seconds ago. She just did it.
How many do you have?
I got him some signatures.
Oh, bless
About-
your heart.
Probably with these, I probably have 75, 80.
you want me to sign like the top of one list to make it easier, or can you just?
It doesn't matter because she has two on this one. Doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean it's been tough because I was telling Alana the other day. It's like you can't really go out and do too much door to door right now. And
Nope. I wouldn't.
I've been kind of waiting, you know. And
If someone knocked on my door, I would not be happy.
You could tell. Do you want your mail? You want this bike?
I would never use my position for that purpose.
Your position as a mail carrier?
I know you're not supposed to under the Hatch Act. I mean, that's
Course,
part of the
yeah.
purpose is that you don't use
Oh,
your
just
position to influence your
Yeah.
government duties and stuff. So, I know. You know, it's funny is I deliver all kinds of mail, political mail all the time. You know.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny. I get to see it all though. I
That's
mean,
true.
It's like wow. You know, you kind of have a good sense of who's going to win and lose.
By the mail?
Based on the mail?
Based on how much. You can tell if somebody's underfunded.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
can't
yes.
spend any or
Oh.
send very much.
Oh.
I mean, you know, depending, but you get a barometer a little bit.
And if you can hear me, if you can unmute your mic.
Well, then, hey, Jeanette, did you see that they moved the town elections 2 weeks? They didn't. They did not move them to November like the governor wanted.
I gave you my soc too.
That's good.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
That was such a premature decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. See, I know that the assistant registrar, I know will do it right.
Yeah.
You were the assistant registrar in Albemarle County, right?
I was in the I wasn't the assistant, but I was in the registrar's
I
office.
mean, that's what I meant, though. You were in the registrar's office.
Yeah.
I remember.
Preston, you've done everything. Every time we have some, I worked as a, I'm just like,
He was a roofer, too.
I know, he's done everything. I worked at a waste transfer facility.
It's the Preston's. Okay.
I mentioned that, but they didn't seem to care.
Hey, my first job was at Subway.
How about that?
And I worked
Oh.
retail.
It's pretty tough.
I worked at Hot Topic.
Hot topic.
Shannon, can you hear
That's
us?
tough with
That was my
teenagers.
first job.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yep.
Was it one here locally?
New York.
Yeah.
Does she talk? In the mall?
Yeah.
That's where Hot Topic is.
Next to the Claire's, right?
We hated Claire's.
Actually, I think they just declared bankruptcy not long ago. I think Claire's, I think they ended up declaring bankruptcy. The company did.
They did.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hers. No, it's. I don't understand why there's two.
So if this thing, I mean, if it's waves and you're talking about
This is the phone.
easing restrictions in the summertime and
Show
then
the
it
phone here.
restrictions
Show
back in the
Hector.
wintertime.
The mic
I
there,
mean, it's-
not the phone.
I don't know what, I don't know what my job will look like during Christmas.
Is she trying to
if we're in
talk?
the middle of one of these COVID waves and
Yeah, she is.
smash
She's
Christmas on
trying to
top of
talk.
it.
Right, it's gonna.
Is she
I mean,
dialed
You
in?
have
I
to
don't know what-
consider
as
that
well?
the time of the year,
Yeah.
it's gonna be humongous effect on schools, postal service.
Right.
The bottom one
All right,
has
we-
a picture is showing a phone. So you know when you dial in?
Yeah.
Use your computer.
Oh,
It's-
got it.
she
Okay.
might be
I
using
think
it
you're
for
gonna see a lot of people buying.
So Shannon, if you can hear me, if you can change your audio settings to computer instead of phone.
It's gonna happen again.
Right. And just the economic effect is drastic.
I think she's paused trying to figure out.
Yeah, I think you're gonna see these weird cycles of like hoarding and then
That's why it
places
shows
where
the
there's
phone.
nothing available.
'Cause it's
I mean, it's gonna be
phone.
kind of one of these where you're gonna have to buy it when you can get it because the supply of basic things may not be
no, turn on
available.
computer.
I tried to buy a swing set. They were out of stock everywhere in this world for 3
I think she's
weeks.
maybe using her phone.
Wow.
Finally got an email that one swing set was back in stock, and I bought it. In 2 minutes, it was gone.
I never thought about that.
Swing
That's
sets,
true.
can't buy them anywhere.
or just call into the number.
Funny, swing sets
and
are an
don't
old
even
thing. I
log
used to have a
into the
swing
system.
set, but you don't, but you don't see as many now.
Right.
I got that.
It's crazy.
I know when I need to buy something, I'm going to Alana.
Yeah, I think
I had to buy commercial, like toilet paper. I went onto a commercial website
Oh, wow.
because unless you have time to go to 10 stores to find it, you're not finding it.
I don't get, Don, what is this one up here?
I'm not
Almost
going.
every time.
Really?
Don,
Yeah,
what
we
is
have
this
to,
one up
I
here?
mean, look at
It
Manassas
looks like
City and their
she
proposed budget, right?
Did the
They're gonna.
remote
I
in
think they're
for the
still-
computer, but said not to do
They were
the
Prince William
audio.
was
I
considering.
know, but there was two before.
still
Right, so
reducing
when
it
you
for
go
the
in, you
tax.
say,
They're both.
Yeah.
one with the
'Cause I think
audio.
Manassas
Well, they're gonna
was
hold it,
budgeting.
they're gonna wait till, they're gonna look revenue, it's contingent on revenue.
Because I know Manassas was going to do $1.44.
Right.
But I just saw somebody put on
She
Facebook
was
that
dialing
they're
in
going to make a
that one.
push in Prince William. to
Can she
reduce the
close
rate,
out and then come back in again?
to make it so that the bills are flat? Like they're going to take the rate down enough to counteract the whole assessment increase. They were talking like $1.08 and something.
Right.
But I don't know how serious. I saw somebody talking about it on Facebook, that it's going up before the supervisors.
I think the smart way to do it is to assume really the worst and try
Yes.
your best to, because you don't wanna
Yeah.
have expectations and then, you know, let people down.
Yeah.
You wanna already assume the worst and
I'm glad Laszlo's budgeted conservatively.
right, flat budget.
I mean, I'd love to do employee raises, but I do understand, like, it's really tough right now. and-
Not right now.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen over the next year until a vaccine comes.
It's really, like,
Okay, you can talk, because I got the audio on. They'll just see you, but not hear you.
Oh. And they can't even see me,
Yes.
so.
Yes.
oh yeah, we're gonna look pretty, but they can't hear us.
When I start singing, that's when you wanna cut the mic.
Oh, we should have Zoom karaoke at Preston's Pub there.
Oh, did you do it?
No, I just thought of it right now.
That's a good idea.
And my genius idea.
That
Turn
is
the
a
audio
genius-
back on, they need to hear
Gotta
that.
run it by them, yeah.
Maybe,
No, I'm just joking. Sorry.
maybe that's what you do when you go do your pickup order. You do a
Yeah.
round of karaoke and then you pick up your order and leave.
Oh, well.
That would be entertaining for like a Friday or Saturday night. Everyone just watch the
That.
Preston
that
Pub
face.
karaoke.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
I might do that. I'd watch.
Yeah, I mean, what else are you gonna watch?
Right.
That's awesome.
They should just use GoTV, they can't.
Did anybody else see that they said a Hershey store opened in Betty Marie's spot?
Yes, and they still have the Betty and Marie sign up. I feel like it's like
This communication.
stepping on their
Can you
grave.
do a test, Jeanette? Is that Shannon on the phone?
Hi, everyone. Shannon Myers is on.
Hey, Shannon.
Hey,
Shannon,
Shannon.
hi.
Yeah. Sorry.
We are so
I'm like, I
sorry.
have everything on. I get this to work all the time. Oh, well.
Okay, well, we're so sorry for the technical difficulties, and I thank you for your patience. And thank you very much for making application. Can you see us? I mean, just out of curiosity.
I cannot at this point. I didn't pull you up on the computer.
Oh, no, I'm just curious,
I can
just
keep doing
curious.
that while I'm talking.
Sure. We appreciate you taking time this evening, and again, I'm very sorry for the delay, for the technical difficulties. What we would like to do is, we'll have you make an opening statement, and then we will, one by one, ask questions. We'll go down the line. We'll try to have 2 rounds of questions, and then at the conclusion of the questions, we will have you do a closing statement. So please proceed with your opening statement now.
Okay. Thank you so much for talking with me this evening. I am Shannon Myers. I am a Virginia resident of about 24 years, and I've been a resident here at Manassas Park for around 22. I have 3 children who have either went through or are going through Manassas Park City Schools at this point. 2 graduated from MP. One will be attending George Mason in the fall, and the other will be attending Christopher Newport. And then I have a 10th grader who will tell you that he's an 11th grader since he's not going back to school any longer.
this year. And then I've been in an HR recruiting professional type role for over 25 years. Been in my current position for about 12, so I don't have any plans on going anywhere anytime soon. And then I've been a volunteer and a community leader, from being on a swimming team board, local community, to an athletic parent, to on the PTO board at the Manassas City Schools twice. So I've been in the city for a while, and I, love where we are, and I'm happy to be here this evening.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. What we'll do is we will start with Councilmember Shoemaker. Your question?
Sure. Then I'll give you the hardest question you might have tonight. I'm going to give you the same question that I asked Rachel, just so that we try to keep it even and compare answers. One of the things that gets brought up frequently is funding and being able to pay for the operations that we have. And so, what is your plan? What do you want to do in terms of a division that is declining in enrollment? And the school board's projection is the next 4 years out we'll have declining enrollment. How would you manage through with less students, possibly less money, and how would what would your thoughts be about how to manage a smaller division?
So I think that looking at our neighboring communities as well, we are a smaller community. We are a smaller school at this point. Budgets will fluctuate up and down just like they do in corporate America. And I think that one of the things that we really need to look at across the board for us is what makes sense. Some things that we do today may not make sense if our enrollment goes way down. The amount of teachers that we have today may not be what we need. So I know that they do those analysis, and I've seen it at the school board meetings where they say, this year our enrollment is projected to be this, and we need this many teachers. And I think that some of the things that we need to do overall is, one, pause and look at the overall picture as to what it is today. And, absolutely we need to look to the future, but it may decline, or something may change drastically, as we can tell even with this year. Something may change drastically, something may pop in here. Amazon may hire everyone, and they all might want to move to Manassas Park. So I think that all projections can ebb and flow, and we need to look at that overall picture, because it may not be the same as what we're projecting.
Okay.
That answers your question.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Vice Mayor Banks?
Hi, Shannon.
Hello.
Manassas Park lags behind in compensation for teachers and staff in comparison to our localities in Northern Virginia. My question for you is, what ideas would you have to retain high-performing teachers and staff and also recruit teachers, other than with compensation?
So, go ahead. Is there more to that?
Nope, that's it.
Oh, so this is my question, because I've been a recruiter for going on 20 years, and I think that some of the things that we see overall is the retention of our senior teachers absolutely declines when we look at them not being paid the same way that a Fairfax County or even Prince William County are paid. I think that overall, I don't know that the school system is as we do in corporate America, where we say, well, you pay based on performance. Well, that really doesn't work necessarily in a school system. But I do think that there are pieces and parts to that we should be looking at. If you retain teachers that have shown their worth by, it could be, not a retention bonus necessarily, but it could even be supplies for their classroom or other things. I think that there are other ways that you can pay for performance, even if it's not listed out like that. You know, recruiting teachers, I think that this is something that's been a stickler point for me. I may have even copied everyone on the other side of the line on calls that I've done about overall recruiting. We don't need to be going to 15 school districts throughout the area and New York and Pennsylvania and Ohio to find talent. We're seeing right now in the industry, if you're looking for brand new teachers right out of school, which is what we're doing if we're going to those college career fairs, we're seeing that schools aren't going back in the fall. We've already, in my day-to-day life, I've already seen that there are a couple schools that have pulled out of coming back in the fall. Now, this is pandemic area right now, but we're looking at how is that going to morph and change what overall structure of hiring a brand new out-of-college candidate would look like. I think that there are other ways for us to attract candidates, be it referral bonuses, or not bonuses necessarily because we don't have the money to pay, but referral, variety of different things, referral, giftings for like school supplies, like I said, things like that. I think that there are other ways that you can do that other than monetarily. Just even wow, you did a great job. I think that we lack some of the recognition to some of the teachers that go above and beyond, and that matters as well. But I think that overall there are a lot of different opportunities that we have to find new talent and retain talent.
Thank you.
Thank you. My question is in number 3, where it discusses standards or best practices that have not yet been implemented in our division. Could you be more specific? You said there is still much to be done in our school system. Can you give some examples of what you think still must be done?
Sure. I'm gonna use the one-to-one device option that I alluded to in that question. You know, we have had the one-to-one devices for many years for our high school students, and much better than Fairfax County. When we came into this pandemic, we already had our students having these devices. So that's a great thing that we had, but we didn't have our teachers and our staff and everybody ready to go day one when they were like, you got to pull your students out of there. And I think that's where work could be done. We have the opportunity to look at some of the different things that we have implemented and then expand on that. So yes, we had that device, perfect, but we didn't have our teachers ready to go. You know, I joked that, well, we should never have another snow day after this because the students have their devices and the teachers know how to use them. So I just think that there are things like that there's much more to be done. I think within our special education piece, I've been lucky enough to have a child that's been in special ed, a child that's been AP, and a child that is, you know, that average student that isn't in either of those. So I've gotten to see the wide variety of what we have to offer. You know, I've seen the special education classes where they could absolutely use more help, or, you know, they're asking for, does anyone have a puzzle that you can send in, things like that. I think that we need to just expand on the programs that we currently have, the food program that we had, the family market, the different things like that. There are so many options that we can just build upon from what we've already done. I don't think that our school system is in a bad place. I think that we can tweak it, and that a new set of eyes would be good to be in there to just say, well, have we ever thought about this? And maybe we did it 10 years ago and it didn't work, but it may work now. So I just think that's kind of where I see our best practices as just expanding on what we already have.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Mensing?
Hi, Shannon. My question relates to the coronavirus that's going on right now. Obviously, this school year has been impacted, and we're expecting next year is going to be impacted as well. We're looking at intermittent closures, possibly one set of students going to school on one day of the week and another set of students going on a separate day of the week. As a school board member, you will set policy for the school division. How do you think we're going to go forward through this next year?
So I think it's going to be bumpy, just as it is going to be for everybody's businesses and trying to find healthcare and childcare and all of that. So I think that it's going to be bumpy. Part of what I do day to day is strategy. So I think that it's really looking at what are the, as we just talked about best practices, but what are some of those options and really looking at them, not just saying, well, this is what we're going to do because we can and going forward. I think that looking at everything with strategy and with, new vision may be what we need to do. And it's step back. This is going to be completely different for all of us. And it's not going to be something that can be taken lightly. So I think as a school board member across the board, I know that we have a great school board right now. I can't say that we don't. And that's why I actually threw my hat in the ring and said, okay, it's time for me to try this, because I think that it is going to be a bumpy road. And I think being able to mold that and strengthen what they've already done is where we're going to be able to see a lot of good. I know that's not an answer, but I don't think that we know what COVID is going to throw us, because it's thrown us so many different things from day to day. And I think until we know, what the governor is going to say, there's a lot with the state and what they mandate that we have to do and don't have to do that obviously we have to look at as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Machado? Your sound is not on.
Yes, I just unmuted.
Okay.
Hi, Shannon. You listed in your top priorities for the school division. Number 2, transparency and accountability. Would you please elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure. So transparency and accountability in my eyes is a big thing within communication and collaboration. I think that you'll see throughout my answers that I would love to see as a community, our school and our governing body be a little bit more joined at the hip. I feel like sometimes in the meetings that, my husband and I do attend both sets of meetings when we can. And, we sit in there and I'm like, is that what they said in the other meeting? And I think if there's some additional collaboration so that we know what's happening on the city side, that the school knows, back and forth, that's kind of what I'd be looking at. I think that it would be a neat idea to have, I know you all have working sessions that you do now, but if some of those could be televised, that we're coming out as a united front. I know that the schools are a function of the city. I've been in recruiting, which is a function of HR, and sometimes you feel like you're kind of removed so much that you're not sure what the right hand is doing. And I think that that's where I look at transparency and accountability. Transparency being communication is free flowing, and the accountability is being that, what we say we're going to do, we're going to look to do that. And I think that that's, upstanding citizen regardless, but, I think that that's kind of where I was going with that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Javed?
Yes, good evening, Ms. Shannon. So my question is regards to the achievement gaps in our school system. What causes it, in your opinion, and what do you think can be done to minimize those gaps within the students?
I think that sometimes, again, I had the gamut of what our students are seeing, from special ed to AP, and I think that sometimes we're not looking at the whole child. Not everyone is set, and I know that we have some new guidelines about this, but not everyone is set to do a 4-year college. I recruit university hires. That's what I do. So I look at that and say, I'm looking for that technical person not everyone is a technical person, and I sometimes think that we pigeonhole students into an area that maybe they aren't interested in, don't want to do, and we see those results when we're looking at, standardized testing, which I think anyone that has ever had a kid go through an SOL thinks that they're the worst thing ever. Again, it's a state mandated thing, but, I think that we see that when we don't allow our students to really shine where they want to shine.
Councilmember Sendejas?
Hi, Shannon. My question is about equity. So here in Manassas Park, we do have a diverse population of students. We do have a large group of students that come from other countries that migrate to the United States for better opportunities. Many of these children come from low-income households, and also they might have parents or guardians that never been to college or even graduate from high school. So some of these students, they do want to go to college, but they don't know how to navigate the system. And one of the biggest things about Virginia is the questions about institution for undocumented students. So I want to know, do you support institution for undocumented students? And what are some ways to help these families navigate the system if they don't know how to?
I think that, a big thing for me is education is education. I take a lot of pride in saying that I don't look at, any of the things that could be discriminatory. I take that out of the picture. Education is education, and we need to teach. Not only, I hate to say it this way, but not only our students, but our students' parents as well. If they have never graduated high school and they're not knowing how to get their students even, into a program, that's something that we can absolutely have company sponsors come in and talk to our students. I offered to do that with my current employer. I think that we should be taking one step further and implementing things where we do have Saturday work sessions. I know that I can find volunteers in our community to come in and to help our students walk through. Our guidance counselors are great. Don't get me wrong with that either. But I think working through how do we fill out a college application. I've been there. I've done it. It's hard when you have a student that's going, what do they want to know from me? Mom, did you make this much money? Dad, did you do this? So I think that overall, looking at one, the whole student again, and their families. If we need to be having sessions that are teaching them how to do that, again, I know that I can, regardless if I get a position on the school board or not, I can help with finding people who will help in that regard.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind because there's always a need for volunteers. That is crucial. Absolutely. And it seems harder and harder as people live busy lives. They get up very early, go to work, come home. They drive a long distance to get home. They have family activities, a couple of personal things, and then pretty soon it's time to go to bed. I think we essentially live in a bedroom community, don't we, still? So that's really,
we absolutely do. It's been interesting being home, right? With everybody sort of at home with you. I actually said, I'm like, my days are running together and so I think that that's an interesting phenomenon that we're having right now.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, we'll do our second round of questions now. Councilmember Mensing?
Yes. So my final question is about hiring a new superintendent. Dr. McDade is serving one more year, and then you'll be selecting the next superintendent. What qualities would you look for in a superintendent? And would you consider having a residency requirement where they would need to reside in Manassas Park?
So I think that I don't necessarily think that they need to have the residency requirement. I think that we have a lot of people who are in our school system right now that could very well fit the bill for what we'd be looking for. As far as hiring a new superintendent, what qualities I'd like to see, I actually think, and my kids have been in the school system for quite a bit, so I've seen sort of some iterations of what we may be looking for. And I think a superintendent that doesn't not talk to the students. Like if you've seen Dr. McDade has posted things on Twitter and has brought in things for the students, and that has engaged them so much. My daughter graduated last year from Manassas Park, and when he took the stage for graduation, the student body starts chanting his name. That is someone who has integrated themselves within our community and our community of students. I think that is where, yes, having someone who's a resident of Manassas Park, they may know the student in a different light, but I also could counter that with someone who's coming in fresh and new can make friends with all of these students fairly quickly with no reservation of, oh, I know their parent or whatever the case may be. You know, I could argue both sides of that coin, but I think someone who is willing to, one, pull up their sleeves and get in there, this is a community that does that. And you mentioned, you know, Madam Mayor, the volunteering. And I think that is how this community has been brought up. And that is where I would see someone as a superintendent, that being beneficial.
Okay, thank you. Shannon, my question is, I'd like to go back to something that you had mentioned earlier. Since the school board and the governing body are really two distinct bodies with two distinct functions, could you explain what you mean by the two bodies being in lockstep in question number 5? What did you have in your mind?
I kind of mentioned being a function of a larger overall group, and I feel like we as the schools would be looking at being a function of the city. We're maybe not a city organization, as you had mentioned. There are different agendas that each are doing. However, they need to work in conjunction because one really can't work without the other. I mean, if we don't have a city, then we don't need a city school kind of thing. So I think that just working in lockstep, in my opinion, is seeing that, you know, we do have a state government component that says you need to do X, Y, Z, and this is how it's done, and you're going to get this amount of funding. However, I know that those schools do depend on our city to help us with many of those things. And I think that that's where being in lockstep in terms of we know what's needed, you know what's needed, it's like no surprise. I feel like some of the things sometimes it's like, did we not know that was happening, or did they not know that was happening? And that's where I see when I come home from the meetings, I'm like, how did this get to this point? So I think that the communication and being really integrated as a function of the city, even if different agendas again, but as a function of the city is where I'm leading to for that answer.
Thank you. Thank you. Vice Mayor Banks?
Shannon, what's your vision or what improvements would you like to make with the schools?
I really would like to see us look at the recruitment and retention of our staff. I think doing more reviews of our current practices, what we do, how many times we actually evaluate and touch and look at the performance of our teachers. You know, I think that once they get past the 3-year mark, that lags off a bit. And I think that still needs to be, we need to hear what the teachers need as well. And I think that that's something that I'm somewhat passionate about, just from being a recruiter in nature. I think that looking at different mentorships and staffing opportunities and exploring new options for how we attract new teachers and keep them engaged. And one of the things that I had thought of was find a way that we can engage our students to participate in, city council meetings, be it they're coming in with a TV production class and they're doing something with that, or you need photographs done and it's the photojournalism class that's coming in to do that. That's all things that can save money, give these students credit, and give them something that's tangible that they have. I think that integrating the school with all of that could be beneficial. So that's where I really see my strengths, is being able to leverage kind of that knowledge that I have in hiring and HR type functions, and just integrating people and strategy.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Shoemaker?
All right. I'm going to give you the same question that I gave Rachel, just to see how you'll answer it. There's been a lot of talking over the last few years about the needs of the school division, needs of the city in terms of finances. We heard from the school division, they're not able to keep up with our neighboring jurisdictions, particularly with pay. And I know you've started addressing that in several of your answers. And so I'm going to throw you a hard question. There's no requirement for us to run a school division. Several cities in Virginia, they've merged or joined with the adjoining counties, and they run joint school divisions. Fairfax City is one of them. They don't run their own school division. Williamsburg also does not.
Right.
And so I'm interested, in order to perhaps save money and bring teachers up pay-wise to what the neighboring jurisdictions are paying, and also to give students more opportunities, given a bigger division. Would you be interested in, are you in support of, are you interested in learning more about possibly merging our school division with Manassas or Prince William in order to achieve some of the goals that the school board and that they've laid out over the last few years, but have not been able at this point to pay for?
To that, I would say there's a lot that I would need to learn. Looking at the other candidate who has been on the board and knows kind of the intricate details of what they have been doing, I don't have that back knowledge. So taking that piece out of it, I would say, one, there's a lot that I would have to read up on and figure out what they have looked at in the past and what they have thought of. And if it would make the most sense for the city to do that, I would say nothing should be off the table. I think that when you go into something new or you have new eyes that come in, you should never just say, we've done that before, we can't do it again. It may be something that needs revisited. I think that I would have to take that step back and say, I don't know those answers. I would really need to look at what all the options are, what the other jurisdictions that did kind of move away from that decentralized model, that it's not part of the city, and how that looks, and do a lot more research than, in all transparency, that I haven't done to this point. So I would somewhat defer that to, yes, it is a hard question, because I don't know all of the details, maybe that others who have been in this position would know.
Thank you. Councilmember Machado?
Yes, Ms. Mayers, I have a question regarding how would you engage the community so parents and students take advantage of the dual enrollment programs at Governor's School and at the Early Identification Program for first-generation college students?
So I think an interesting thing on that is my daughter did dual enrollment last year, and she had a class of 25 students, about 25 students in her class. And I would think that something that may be an option is looking at buddying those students up, so that we have, one, created sort of a buddy mentor program internally within our students, which gives sort of a feeling of community and family overall. But for, first generation students that are looking to go to college and that want to build that relationship with a college, we had mentioned it before, many of them don't know where to start. So that might be an option. I'm thinking back to when we had the foreign exchange students here, and I hate to say it like that, but we buddied those up with students that were already interested in doing that program. We have that for other programs as well. So maybe we look at those students that were in the program the year before, buddying up with some students that expressed interest and allowing them to look at that. I think that not everyone wants to go to a four-year college, and then that dual enrollment piece, they may be trying to take over the family business or doing something like that, and it may be a different mindset for them. So one, expanding their knowledge of what the program is, buddying them up with students that are already in that program if they've expressed interest, or even having teacher recommendations of those students, and that's how you pair them up with someone who's taken classes first semester or something like that. I think that there are ways that we could go around that and actually increase the knowledge of those students, because many of them think that they can't do it. I don't need to do that. I'm not going to go to college. Well, they may change their mind once they're in a program like that and they already have credit. They'll be able to utilize that moving in. They're already one step ahead. So I think getting that knowledge out to them would be beneficial.
Thank you. Councilmember Javed?
Yes. So if you do get appointed to a school board, what is your overall vision of how the education system should be in our community, and how do you see that vision supporting our local economy?
Could you repeat the first part of that question?
The first part was what is your overall vision of education in our school system?
Well, I think the overall vision of education in our school system and or any school system is, a means to an end almost. I mean, I think that looking at that overall, we want our students to succeed. So looking at them succeeding to the end of their high school career and then moving on to college if they so choose, trade if they so choose, and there are some that will say, I'm not cut out for school, and they'll stop at high school level. I think that how that helps our economy is looking at that overall set of what we can achieve while we have them for the first 13 years, if you count kindergarten or preschool, even longer than that. While we have these students, building them up in our community, showing them that it's okay to ask questions and to volunteer. I'd love to see if it was doable within, state guidelines. I'd love to see some more work programs within our school system where we have our students, working for defense contractors for short stints that they get credit for, or, I think that we have many students that go and work for their families and things like that, but it could be a true work study program. I think that there's a lot of other things that we can look at. So my vision would be to really focus in on what will help that student once they leave our hands as a senior and go on to do whatever their end goal is. So that would be my vision, to give them as much as we can while they're here before they're sent out to the real world and, have to go and do whatever they need to do.
Councilmember Javed, was there a part 2 to that question? I thought the question was longer when you first stated it.
Yeah, the part 2 was how that vision will support our local economy.
Well, I think that the local economy, and sorry, I guess I was kind of going overall, but our local economy, if we have more students that have felt nurtured and natured while they were in school, they're going to hopefully want to stay in school, hopefully want to continue their education if that is what they choose. I'm a big proponent of the trades. I think that if that is what our students want to do, our local economy, looking at what we have right here, right now, building them up, as I mentioned, will obviously help, well, I think will obviously help our economy in the long run, because they're going to stay in school and they're going to become these great students that we know they are, and great community members once they leave Manassas Park.
Thank you. Councilmember Sendejas?
Yes, my question has to do with discipline. Let's say if a student gets into a fight on campus, should they get suspended? Should they have detention, or should there be a different approach to address their behavioral needs?
So I think that could be answered in any of those options. I would say that without knowing everything along the lines of why that student got in a fight and jumping, I wouldn't say that we should jump to any of those quickly. I would think that, we have resource officers in our schools to help navigate why the students did what they did, or if they were in a fight. So I'd say it could be any of those options, depending upon what the reasoning was behind all of that. And I think there are a lot of factors other than just say they should be one of those options. Go into detention to maybe one or all of those things.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We're at the point now, Shannon, thank you for the answers that you've provided. Would you like to have your closing remarks right now?
Sure, thank you. At this point, just again, thank you for allowing me to speak today. I hope that, I'll be taken into consideration for this position. I know that I have a very worthy opponent who has been on the board for quite some time. So I appreciate the time that you've taken to listen to maybe some new options that may or may not have been thought of before. And, again, I feel that I'm a member of this community, and I will be for many, many years to come. So regardless, I appreciate the time and effort that it takes to find someone to be on the school board, and I appreciate your time this evening.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you making application. We always appreciate anyone who puts themselves forward and to be considered for anything whatsoever. That's good citizenship. We want to thank you for calling in tonight, taking the time to talk with us. The public hearing will very likely be May 19th. We will confirm that since things have been rather up in the air because of the recent events. But if anyone is not comfortable to come in person, they may most certainly send all of their comments to Lena Connor, who is our city clerk. And we will confirm all this information, and Lena will send both you and Rachel an email to confirm everything. So, and again, thank you, and again, sorry for the technical difficulty that delayed everything.
No worries. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you too. Bye.
Public hearing is May 5th.
Okay. Okay. Well, then we're going to need to get an email out to both. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So May 5th, confirming May 5th for the public hearing.
And the appointment would be May 19th.
May 19th for the vote. Gotcha. Thanks, Lena.
Thanks.
And I know they'll appreciate the email. Okay, so next we will be moving into a closed session. My understanding is city attorney has called in to provide the correct motion.
Yes, Mayor, I do. Are you ready?
We are ready.
Okay, I just want to make sure you can hear me. I recommend the governing body go into closed meeting for a single matter requiring both discussion and consideration of the disposition of publicly held real property, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the city, and consultation with the city attorney regarding a specific legal matter that requires the provision of legal advice by the city attorney pursuant to paragraphs 3 and 8 of subsection 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you.
So I just texted, for those who are calling in, I just texted you the number to call in once we log off of GoToMeeting for the closed session meeting. Please let me know if you haven't received it. Okay.
Yeah, I got it.